Good morning. Today is February 20th, 2023, Monday, just about noon, and I'm getting ready to head to Craig from Steamboat Springs, where I'm at right now. So, working my way through the steamboat crowds. So I'm finished with my work here in Steamboat, and now I am attempting to head to Craig. But I thought I would give you guys a view of Steamboat Springs for those of you who have never seen it. And then we'll work our way to Craig. But I thought I'd just go ahead and go through town first. So kind of a, kind of a dual purpose here. Just try not to get ran over or run in to anybody. We'll head on down through town. That wasn't bad. So 11:52, well, it's hard to say. I don't think we're in a rush right now, but Steamboat does have rushes, and it, in my personal opinion, if you're a big city person, like a big inner city person, metro area person, and you're used to really tightly jammed traffic, then you'll fit right at home in Steamboat. Yeah, we're kind of in a lull right now. Usually we're pretty much stacked up all the way down this road heading into Steamboat. Later on this afternoon it will probably be that way. Or maybe in just a few minutes. I mean, we're 7 minutes until noon. Well, so you're getting a little bit nicer of a view of it. One thing that I notice about Steamboat is people are notoriously speedy in Steamboat. I don't understand why there are even traffic signs in Steamboat. Or maybe there's so much crime that the people that should be enforcing the speed limit are just too busy. But typically, yeah, you can see that. Maybe you can see that. And I'm going slower than most. So, as evidenced by, you can see that 4Runner coming around me right now. And there are people behind me. This is just normal Steamboat. I'm not griping about it, but I am pointing it out. I don't quite understand what the thinking is on people's behalf. Or is it just because one person is driving fast, everyone's driving fast, and the police can't really do anything about it? Or do they care? Maybe it's a matter of they just don't enforce the speed unless you're really breaking along. Maybe. I really don't know. But we're here downtown Steamboat. Look at that, a bicycle store that's actually open. You know, COVID really did a number on all the bicycle stores. So a lot of them closed. The one that we had in Craig was pretty cool. It was a nice bicycle store. I liked it because it was it resembled an old-fashioned store where people that did work in the store. And the people that owned it, and Craig, the guy was a really good bicycle, a very mechanically inclined guy. And I liked him, and his wife operated it. I think she was some medical professional of some kind, but she was either wasn't practicing it or was hanging out at the store when she could, or just, I'm not sure. But I miss them having a store there. Although, I will say this, after changing my diet, I rode bicycles, and I think I've mentioned it a couple times, but I'm not the typical spandex wearing, helmet wearing, bicycle riding guy. I wear blue jeans and a baseball cap when I ride a bicycle. Unless it's cold, then I might put a coat on, and I might have work boots on. And I am proud to have that outfit on, and just to have you know how I feel about the bicyclist culture, the styles. I would much rather people mistake me for someone that doesn't have a license, maybe because I've got a drug problem, and that's why I don't have spandex on and I'm not wearing a styrofoam helmet, than being mistaken for a spandex wearing bicyclist. I find that stereotype incredibly noxious. I've touched on that before, coming out of Steamboat, but going up towards Avenires. And a lot of it is that the safety equipment that you have to wear more and more every day, because now we've got a nanny state. They make us do everything that they decide they want us to do. We have to wear styrofoam helmets. In Steamboat, that's what you have to do, or you get a $300 fine. That didn't happen to me personally. I heard a guy talking about that a couple of years ago. Well, last year. He wasn't none too happy about a $300 fine for not wearing a styrofoam helmet, especially in light of the fact that studies have shown. Do I have the studies at my fingertips? No, I have a steering wheel at my fingertips. However, you can look this stuff up on and fact check me if you so desire. Studies have shown that people that wear helmets get into more accidents, and the accidents are more severe than people that don't wear helmets. So I would rather be safe wearing my baseball cap and using caution when I'm riding a bike than putting a helmet on, putting my spandex on, thinking I'm invulnerable, and then wrecking and sliding up down the street in my spandex and my styrofoam helmet and ending up at the hospital. I mean, you know, like I said, I am a much more careful bicyclist when I'm not feeling invulnerable. Let me put it that way. That's probably the best, because I've never had a bicycle helmet, and I don't plan on getting one. I'm not going to do it. So I'm probably done riding my bike in Steamboat. And the consensus for most people about bicyclists is that bicyclists are rude and stupid. They get in the way. That's the consensus of a driver. And I understand that, especially in a relatively busy area where you have to maneuver around bicyclists. It's real easy to get that kind of an attitude about bicyclists. I find that because I like riding bikes. I like as a kid I liked riding bikes. My sentiment hasn't really changed on it, other than when I do it today, I do it more for health. Well, I like it. It's fun. It was the first freedom I had when I was a kid, riding a bicycle. You know, that was much superior, quite superior than walking. But do I have to tell people do I have to tell bicyclists this? When you're in a car and bicyclists are being stupid, they're getting out in the road, they're being rude, it doesn't take but one or two bicyclists to do that, to ruin it for everyone. And when I tell people that I ride a bike, they typically are like, oh, well, you're one of those, huh? And I'm not one of those. I am really careful to stay the hell off the road unless it's a really, really narrow road. And if it's a narrow road, it's going to be a very low populated road because there won't be many people coming on it. I won't, coming or going on. I won't put myself or other people into that kind of harm. And that is harm. Putting people in harm's way. But the majority of the bicyclists are actually pretty safe. Most people try to stay out of the lane, and they don't push it. What I find is it's usually groups of people that it's the same thing with a pack of vehicles going fast. I think groups of people feel invulnerable. So if you have 3 or 4 people that are riding their bikes, they kind of want to ride neck and neck so they can talk. I understand that too. But when you do that and you start crowding the lanes out, you risk. I mean, it's a dangerous thing to do, and you certainly aren't making the sport of cycling attractive to anyone when you do that. You annoy the hell out of everyone. And a lot of people die from doing that. I mean, when you have a wreck like that, if you have a wreck with a car, I don't care how thick your styrofoam helmet is. If you have a wreck with a car, you're on the losing end of that wreck. Even when the car's not moving and you hit it. When I was in Seattle, I was riding my bicycle, and this was back in the 80s, right? Like early 80s, I think. I was riding my bike in Seattle. Me and my girlfriend had moved up to Seattle, and it's fun riding my bike. I mean, it was 80s, everything was 80s. There might have been bike helmets in the 80s, but they were probably laughed at, and I think they should be frowned upon today, but neither here nor there. So I'm riding down basically the main drag in Auburn, Washington, south of Seattle. And a lady pulled up. I'm riding down this main drag. She pulled up so she could see and got right directly into my traffic. And I was riding on a sidewalk, I believe is what it was. And I didn't see her. I hit her broadside, went over her hood. It was my fault, completely my fault. Didn't hurt my bike, didn't really hurt me. I might have had some scratches on my hands. Didn't really hurt her car. I think I hit her tire. So no one was hurt, but it was losing for me. It didn't do a thing to her car. So again, so it takes a few bicyclists to make everyone cranky with bicyclists. And wait until this summer in Steamboat. When the weather's nice and the bicyclists are out, because that's a big deal now here. It can be pretty annoying. In fact, last fall, I was on Yampa Avenue in Steamboat, which was a block over to our south. We're heading west right now. So south is to our left on Yampa Street. And Yampa is a 15-mile-an-hour street. It's a really cool little street. So I'm driving. That's my typical way out of town. I really don't much care for going through Highway 40 in Steamboat ever. It's really the worst way to get through Steamboat. But I wanted you to see it. So we made it through Steamboat. Now we're heading to Craig. So I'm driving down that street, heading to Craig. So I'm driving west. And I get behind, I believe it's like 5 or 6 teenage girls on bicycles. And they are weaving back and forth, weaving in and out. They're all alongside each other. They're sort of taking up the lane, but at some point they got out of the lane. I was right behind them. And so I moved in front of them. They were over in the median. And so they were out of my way. And so I just went ahead and I went past them slowly, not fast. And one of the girls got off of her bike and was standing there huffing and yelling at me because she was planning on turning. I was watching them really closely, so I knew that they were okay, but I'm sure she learned that move that she did from her mom. And that move I interpreted as anytime you can find something to be defensive about, especially if it's against a white male, take advantage of it. That's what I got from her. That was a feeling I got because she was absolutely she was just playing. She was just acting out. And I just kind of looked at her in the mirror, making her scene. And then I think when she had finally yelled enough that her friends were paying attention to her, she was satisfied and they just went about their business. So, that, I would say, is probably a pretty safe interaction when there is an interaction between a bike and a car. It's probably not very good. And the bicycle's going to lose. You might win in court. I mean, if somebody does something dangerous in traffic and hurts you, you might win in court. And so your heirs might get some money from something like that. But you might be dead. So while I don't believe in styrofoam helmets, if you're in an area where you can get hit by a car moving like we're moving here, a styrofoam helmet's probably not going to help you one little bit. There's a really good chance that you could get hit so hard that the shock wave will knock your shoes off and your helmet, just destroy your helmet. That's a horrible thing to consider because that's a pretty heavy hit. But that does happen. When people get hit with something, it's a bizarre thing, but it knocks their shoes off a lot of times. Isn't that weird? And so I would assume that it might even do that, just break your helmet. You know, that shock going through your body. So I'm moving at 65 right now. I'm not seeing any reason to rush. People are driving. They're driving better than they usually drive on 40. But they're typically going about, the slow people typically go between 5 and 10 slower. That's where I'm behind right now. I'm behind a group of people that are doing that. However, we have a passing lane coming up in about half a mile. We'll drop down into the little town of Milner, where we're supposed to slow down to 55, and we'll get to the passing lane where these people will probably go 70 so no one passes them. Do I sound jaded? Do I sound bitter and cranky about traffic? Because I am. And especially for you people that live in big cities and have to put up with really annoying traffic all around you. Like being stuck on the Katy Freeway in Houston, or something like that. You're probably laughing at me, and I don't blame you. But annoying traffic is annoying traffic. Yeah, they're speeding up. I was doing, so this is the same person that was doing 59 and 65. I don't know what she's doing now, but for me to pass her, I'm doing almost 2 miles an hour. I am in a passing lane, so it's legal. But really? Do I really have to do that? Now I got a guy on my tail. I wish he would have just got closer to my tail and passed me. However, this time of day, the guy behind me will be able to pass me around this corner. So if he really needs to pass me, he'll get his opportunity to. How many of you have passed somebody and then had them speed up and catch up with you and tailgate you after you've passed them? I've had that happen. It doesn't happen a lot, but I've had that happen, and it's certainly annoying. I get quite angry when somebody does that. So this guy should be able to pass me now. Certainly, I would be happy if this got around me. He would be happier too. But I'm not slow. I'm doing a little bit above 3 miles an hour over right now. And I'm not going to go any faster because I like this guy to get around me. There he goes. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you getting around me. The traffic is kind of an infuriating thing. The person that was going so slow, 59 miles an hour, that I passed, is now pacing me. She hasn't quite caught up to me, but she's pacing me. That's why I asked that question. We're just passing Saddle Mountain. I was busy griping about traffic, but you could see Saddle Mountain up ahead. It looked a lot like a saddle. Therefore, it's called Saddle Mountain. Now we're in the slow section. And this is another one of those speed areas that really don't make sense, because we are not doing the speed, the illegally mandated speed. I'm following a little bit behind this truck, not going quite. Oh, I'm staying behind him. I don't want to get on tail. I don't want to be one of those people. But going through here, everybody speeds. Well, maybe 1 in 100 don't speed. Maybe 1 in 100 does the speed limit. And the issue is that sometimes the speed limit is intuitive and you know it's too slow. And that's this area right here. There's one area where the speed limit should be slower than 65. And we're now coming up to that area. But we've gone 2 miles or 3 miles in this slow zone. This is the only area where I think a slower speed would make sense, and that's really because there's not much of a curb here. Well, there's not much of a curb. There's snow on the right side, and well, there's snow on the left side. And yet I'm still doing above the speed limit. Not much, but above. The person in front of me is pulling away, which is fine with me. That person did seem to be in more of a hurry than me. Maybe for you people that live in really congested cities and are laughing at me being cranky about traffic, I kind of think that, because I've driven in big cities, I've driven in pretty much all the big cities. I've even driven in Caracas, Venezuela, where speed limits and pretty much everything is basically a suggestion. So I'm not experienced when it comes to driving in a big city. I don't like it though. But if you have the choice of lanes, that is helpful. On a 2-lane, I mean, you're stuck. You're just stuck. If you don't have a passing lane, if you can't pass, if the conditions are bad, or if you've got a line of slow people slowing you down, you're stuck. And so in that sense, it's not a lot different than being on a, having 6 lanes, but nowhere to go because the lanes are full. It's the same principle. So that the slow person that I passed is now pretty far behind. She finally started going her own speed again. She had magnetism was going on there. She had been magnetically pulled faster by me and by this vehicle passing her. But now she's back to her speed, which is probably in the mid-50s, slowing other people down. I guess we have to have those people, right? Because we do. And if it takes all kinds, that's one of the kinds. I ran the camera earlier today going towards Steamboat, and I was talking a little bit about the global warming hoax. And I thought I'd try to say a couple quick things about it that got me thinking about it. First thing this morning, I woke up and I used my phone. My alarm clock, like probably most of us do. I looked at it and it showed me the temperature outside. Well, it showed me the temperature that it wants it to be outside, because the temperature that it was outside was colder. Now today it wasn't a lot colder because it's warmed up quite a bit. So the temperature difference is probably 5 or 6 degrees. Last week and all the weeks before that, every morning, when it's been really cold, below zero every morning, my phone lies to me by 15 or 20 degrees. Why does it do that? It used to never do that. I used to get news like with a radio or a TV or whatever, back when I would watch the more old-fashioned analog media. I could hear on the radio the actual temperature, and it was right. And on TV, the temperature was right. It was correct. So to answer the question, why are temperatures different? Most temperatures, especially on apps, phone apps, are computer-generated estimates. They're not the actual temperature. I don't know if you knew that or not. And that, in my mind, is further proof that the computers that calculate the weather are operating under a global warming scenario that doesn't exist. So they put out faulty information every day. 2 forecasts have been wrong today and yesterday for Craig. Now there's supposed to be a snow advisory tomorrow at 5, I think is when it starts, and going from Wednesday to 6. We'll see how that goes. If it's a snow advisory, the National Weather Service has issued it, so there might be more credibility to it. And another thing I'd like to say about this is that if I don't look at my little phone app in the morning, and I typically do, I won't really know what the low temperature was until I go downstairs and see what the low temperature was on my little thermometer that holds the low and the high temperature for me. And I would challenge everyone, find out how many apps there are out there where you can find this morning's low temperature after it's passed. It's almost like that's being hidden from us. You can find it in some spots. Ironically, some of the government websites will show it. You have to look for it. You have to find it. They've made it hard to find the trends, especially the past trends. It used to be really simple to find past trends, but it's not as simple as it used to be. I used to always look at the past trends. I liked seeing how things compared with what back when weather early software would do that. But since the global warming hoax that we are constantly bombarded with has taken the place of normal weather forecasting and taken the place of honest weather apps, it's hard to find honest information anymore. And information is just mysteriously not there. Information that people used to know. How cold was it yesterday? Do you have a record? Have you kept a record personally? Because that's probably the only way you're going to find out, unless you know how to navigate through one of these websites. One of them that actually does give you that information. There are a few that will, but the vast majority don't. So, what do you do? What do we do? Well, here's what we do. We understand what's going on. We are certainly at the mercy of people with more power than us. People that have a gigantic microphone and that can speak over the top of us. People that can shut us up at will. People that change data and ignore laws or break laws. We're at mercy of all of that stuff every day in our brave new world climate that we're in. But that does not mean that we have to fall for it, settle for it, accept it. We don't have to do any of that. These people can continue pushing the climate hoax, the very thinly veiled climate hoax, but they have got to pump air into every minute of every day, because if they don't, it will fail. Their hoax will fail. The climate is the climate. It's cyclical. It does what it does. Their assertions are wrong. And their assertions are based on misleading information and fabricated data. And that's very provable. Very provable. So really what we can do is just simply understand that we don't have to eat what they're putting in front of us. And most of us don't. So I'm really glad of that. The globalists don't understand that very well. I believe they have got a lot more strength than they actually do have. Now, they do have some strength. That's certainly true. They are making inroads. That's certainly true. But their big globalist fantasy is probably not going to happen. I don't believe it's going to happen. Well, I don't believe it's going to happen on a timetable they want it to happen on. I do think eventually it will happen. But the timetable might be vastly different than they think. So I guess what I'm saying is we know the truth, or if someone doesn't know the truth, search for it and find it. The truth could be as simple as looking at your thermometer in the morning. The truth could be as simple as writing down the cold temperature every morning. That is enough. Depending on the area that you're in. The truth is looking back, or you can find the truth by looking back at the predictions of the global warming panic-stricken alarmists, the Al Gores of this world, the Greta Thunberg family lineage. Her grandpa, he was one of those people that was the sky is falling. Look back at every prediction. There's actually every prediction that has been made, dire prediction, has failed. Every prediction, every single one of them. How do I say this even more clearly? Every single dire global warming prediction has failed. And when the people that make the predictions update their prediction because it has failed, it fails again. Historically, that happens every time. Not one or two times, not here and there. Every single time. Every single prediction, every single global warmist has made, has failed, is failing, will fail. Until they start being honest, and as far as predictions go, you don't have a great track record anyway. But every single prediction that these people make, that they have made, that they stand behind, and that are pushing today, has failed, has likely failed before and been rescheduled, and has failed and been rescheduled, and has failed and will fail. That is the global warming hoax. That is why we wake up in the morning, the first thing we see is an estimated temperature. And if we try to find what the actual low was, if we don't have a way of recording it ourselves, it's hard to find. And if you get curious about what the weather was like last year, try to find that history on your computer. It's findable, but it's very hard to find. And most places don't have it. So let's keep there. I think that's my global warming tirade. Speaking of warming, I am happy to say that it's in the low 30s today because we have a storm moving in. That is a great, reliable indicator of a storm coming in. So a lot of the snowbanks have shrunk considerably, and I'm glad to see that. There's a good chance that you saw my video on rabbit ears last week. It's quite a storm, and I'll be heading down there tomorrow. So I have a couple scheduled appearances to make up on rabbit ears this week, and I'm hoping I can beat the weather. I'm tired of the winter. I really am. I've shoveled, whatever. But it's good to have the water. I mean, everything is that way, it seems like, when it comes to nature. There's a cell phone tower that I can see. You may have seen it a couple minutes ago. It's probably out of your field of view, though. It's over to the left. Oh yeah, now we're turning away from it. I worked for a local cell phone company as an entry-level cell tower technician. And I've got the background, I'm able to do it. I did have things to brush up on. There's no doubt. Especially microwave technology. But that was great because that's very interesting. Although there was a lot of computer technology that is being used. If you understand how a cell system works, you know it's pretty amazing. But anyway, so I was employed about 8 years ago, and on that tower that's now over to my left, we finalized our tower climbing training. I didn't think it would be one bit of an issue because I've done a lot of climbing. I've climbed in caves, I've climbed up the side of the cliffs, rappelled, all that stuff. I've done that. It's a lot of fun. But I never had done that on a tower. I didn't think it would be an issue. And I told the people that hired me at the time, I said, that's not going to be an issue. Of all the things you need to worry about me, that's not an issue. I climb, I love it. It was great. So I went through the climbing school, and I passed. But I also realized that I'm deathly afraid of climbing on towers. And that the guys that hired me had apparently been through this before. People that said, oh yeah, we climb, no big deal. There is a difference climbing a big solid hillside, even dangling off the side of a cliff on a rope. There's a huge difference in my mind between that and climbing a tower. And I decided I wasn't going to do that job. It's kind of sad because I really like the technological side of it, but no, I'm not interested in climbing. Now, this company had some towers that were not huge, but several hundred feet tall. The majority of their towers, I believe, were under 100 feet. However, the tower I climbed, I think it was an 80 or a 90-foot tower. That was enough. That was enough for me. I've had my fill of tower climbing. But having said all that, there probably are still some towers that I would be okay climbing. They would be, and actually they might be much more sketchy than a big cell tower, because those are pretty stout towers. So I saw what looked like an antelope on the road over here. I think it was an antelope. This is a weird spot to see antelope, but the heavy snowfall we've got this winter is really, it's messing with the critters out north and west and south and east, I guess, everywhere. It's making it a lot harder for them to get the food that they can typically get. Overall, this was a pleasant ride. Traffic was minor. Of course, I complained about it, but the traffic was quite minor. It was a pleasant drive. I wish most of my drives were as nice as this. It helps when I don't have to get up early, when I'm not part of the Steamboat work crowd. That is typically the worst crowd to be in. I filmed that several times, but I don't think I've put it out there yet, because it's usually dark when I'm leaving, early morning, and it's not, well, it's interesting, but it's not really interesting. I don't know. It's interesting in its own way. One of these days I'll probably record one that I like. Maybe when it gets lighter earlier, that might help. Is when I leave out in the mornings, like tomorrow, I leave out pretty early and it's still dark. It can be completely dark, or some version of twilight. And so here we are back in Craig, coming in on the east side, heading west. I think that's the first for this channel, recording coming this way into Craig. Craig is a nice little town. Craig is just a regular town. It is not a fancy ski town. It's not really a tourist town, although the powers that be are trying to convince us that Craig is a tourist town. Craig is not a tourist town. Craig is an energy and a ranching town. Any tourism would mainly be hunting, I think. But I have got to feed this car, so I'll feed this car and then we'll continue. All right. I've got some gasoline. I am ready to get through town. One more stop to make, and then I'm going to call it good today. Sometimes I get days that are a little bit quicker than others. This is one of those days. But if you haven't seen Craig, we'll just do a little quick run through the downtown. I think it's just a nice little town. That's basically it. It's not an exceptional town, I don't think, in any manner. Or, some towns have a thing. They've got a thing. Like Steamboat is skiing, right? It's that kind of tourism. Craig is just a nice town. The thing about Craig that I like is that we are in the middle of one of the coolest pieces of land in the United States, where we still have the ability to go out onto this land and do a lot of different interesting, cool things. Educational, recreational, work, whatever. So I'll let this person go. So that's what is really nice about Craig. It's not this ostentatious, weird place. It's just a nice town. Now, if you listen to our governor talk about Craig, oh man, we are a bunch of selfish bastards, and we're conservative. We're probably a hotbed of whatever the federal government calls what. I don't know what they call us nowadays. The typical thing that we're called is white supremacists. And that doesn't matter what race we are, by the way. If we're conservatives, we're white supremacists. So that's just the way life is. Anyway, well, that's just how it is, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna go do some stuff. Be back.